thinking back over the past 2 weeks and having spent quite a bit of time in touch with the outdoors, first during retreat at the camp on the lake, and then walks through woods and hills and along rivers. And yesterday a day at Springwater. One wonders why one should say anything at all on a beautiful morning like this, or what one could possibly talk about. In nature, watching the waters or the wind, the clouds, trees, everything is so clear and eloquent and whole. And words cannot cover that or embrace that, express it. One has said so many things, 7 talks during a retreat, and wonders whether people want to hear what one could call the same thing all over and over again. And yet, if in the speaking and in the listening, memory does not dominate, obscure, then every new sound and every new word is new. And in listening and talking, not dominated by memory or comparison, the mind has a way of renewing itself in that very listening. So this morning, I thought of starting out the talk, seeing where it'll lead us, with some poems by a Japanese poet who was a hermit monk. I won't go into his biography right now, I don't remember it. It doesn't matter. His name was Ryokan. And the 2 books that I read from one is called Ryokan, Zen Monk, Poet of Japan, translated by Burton Watson. The other book is called One Robe, One Bowl, translated by John Stevens. People who are working at the Springwater project have mentioned how incredibly much more one is in touch with the seasons, the weather, and everything that happens when one lives in a tent, which is something like a hut, less than a hut maybe. And this ability at times to really just see things as they are. And this is how Ryokan writes. Very simple and clear. faint trickle of mossy water from a crevice in the mountain rock, passing through the world the clear, still way. Deep in the mountains, an old man holed up for winter. Who'd come to see me? Who but you, friend? How pleasant in my grass hut, stretching out my legs, listening to the sound of frogs in the mountain paddies. In paddies among the mountains, girls transplant rice seedlings. The sound of their singing drifts up from far away. Today it would rather be the sound of a radio. On leaves of the plantain growing by the eaves of my hut, moonlight shines, the night by now far gone. As I cross the summer hills, I see a cuckoo dart through treetops, beating his wings and singing. On green hills, the hue of the water duck's wing. A cuckoo lingers singing in the treetops. The distant village lost in evening mist, when I make my way home to my lodge where cedars stand. Down in the village, the din of flute and drum. Here, deep in the mountain, everywhere the sound of the pines. The rainy season is over. It's now clear. I go out. Green fields and cool breezes everywhere. Unable to sleep, I hear the voice of a young deer rising from a mountain ridge. The branches that will be used for this autumn's firewood are still blooming. Please gather some summer grasses wet with dew and come visit me. Not much to offer you, just a lotus flower floating in a small jar of water. I stretch out for a nap in my little hut. In the fields, frogs chant their songs, and the birds in the bamboo grove sing along. the bamboo grove in front of my hut. Every day I see it 1,000 times, yet never tire of it. Back and forth, all day the bent old man carries water for the parched rice seedlings. The willows are in full bloom. I want to pile up the blossoms like mountain snow. The autumn I waited for, it seems, has come. This evening from every clump of grass, insect cries. Water to draw, brushwood to cut, greens to pick, all in moments when morning showers let up. In a spell when autumn rains let up, I went with the children, following a mountain trail, got the bottom of my robe all wet. No reason, yet it makes me sad. By my door the first fall winds rustling through rice stalks. The sadness of this passing autumn, who to talk it out with? A basket of wild spinach picked, heading home at twilight. Wait for the moonlight before you try to go home. The mountains trail so thick with chestnut burrs. A cold autumn night, I clutch my white robe, the bright clear moon covers the sky. The wind has brought enough fallen leaves to make a fire. When it is evening, please come to my hut to listen to the insects sing. I will also introduce you to the autumn fields. Morning, cutting firewood, filling my jug with pure water, gathering wild grasses, while a cool autumn rain gently falls. The village has disappeared in the evening mist, and the path is hard to follow. I return to my lonely hut, walking through the pines. On the morning after the retreat, Several people were standing on the edge of the lake. Apart by spatial distance from each other. There was the caretaker fishing at a far corner of the dock, which rattles so noisily when there's wind because it is aluminum. It was so quiet. The lake was astonishingly silent. Just every once in a while, furtively, a lapping up of some water, covering the stones, very, very tiny pebbles right where I was standing, all glistening, and glistening extra shiny and bright after one of those brief, gentle lap-ups of water. Because there were no waves, the water was so clear. The sky was clouded. All different shades of white and light grays, except for one spot where it was brighter and a transparent orange. Yet the sun itself was not visible. Again, there was no need to talk. The people who were standing there, one was in touch with all of them. Because the space was no distance. And then one wondered why it is that human beings live in such almost constant tension with themselves and with each other. And whether it has to continue like that forever. In retreat, many people say they get a feeling for this deep silence which does not separate. And yet there's already the concern that comes up, what when I leave, when I go back to family, job, work, situation? Will it all blow? And the same old tensions and problems reappear? One doesn't know. Cannot make any statement about it. It will reappear, because then one already invites it. And yet let us stay with this question. Of whether it's inevitable that there be tension within and among each other. when we're away from a quiet place, maybe even there while we're at the quiet place. But the reason that at a quiet place where one is looking into oneself and listening outwardly as well, why tensions may dissolve is because there's not just outward space, but great inner space to listen. The mind isn't filled with reactions for or against, or if these reactions come up, they are so clearly seen and perceived as being divisive and obscuring what needs to be observed in clarity and silence. And this inner space is nothing that can be or needs to be provided by the environment. A spacious environment is very helpful, but if there is no space in the mind, the most spacious environment does not help, because it is not felt and perceived and allowed to operate. The mind is cluttered with self-concern, worries, memories, and constant self-defense. So how can this inner space, the space of the mind, come into being when we relate with each other? Can it come into being? Because if it is not there when we relate with each other, we just act out our habitual tensions and motives and expectations over and over again. Giving rise in each other of memories of each other, and then we see each other in terms of what we've always been, and there's no chance to see what we really are this moment, free from this domination of memory. So how can that space be born, happen in the mind? The space of not knowing who one is or who others are, and therefore very attentive to what actually goes on each instant. For a hermit monk, as we just read from, it may be easy to have that space, because there's little desire for having this or not having that. There's a flow with the seasons and what's available. And if it is not, no hassle. And yet one hears in these poems the longing for relationship, because human beings are beings of relationship. Relationship is one of the deepest parts of our life. It is our life to be related to each other and to things of nature. And it is only in relationship, not in isolation that one really discovers oneself, sees oneself if one is really into it, understanding the need for seeing oneself. And as when one is in close relationship with people, either at work, where one lives, in the family, that so much comes out, what is deeply ingrained and habit forced. And can that be observed out of a vast space of silence? You could say it doesn't make any sense. It's totally irrational what you say. Either one is caught up in habits of reacting against someone, or there is space, and then the habit does not come up. It is seen and it does not dominate. But this may be a theoretical argument, which may just be said to avoid or postpone looking and listening. Often people say, having heard so much about giving each other space, this is one thing that is often said to make possible a relationship of understanding, to give each other lots of space to be what one is. Give me space to be what I am, and I'll give you space to be what you are. Which could just sort of living along a parallel line of two parallel spaces, which may or may not be conceptual spaces, but not relating, not in touch with each other. And then also people say, I need a lot of space. People don't give it to me, but I need it. People impinge upon me with their ways, their demands, their expectations of what they want me to be like. And I need space from that. I need space to be what I am. And people won't allow me that space to be what I am. Sometimes it is put this way, I need to learn to accept myself as I am. I never have accepted myself. I've always been down on myself, as have other people. And I need space and time to learn to accept myself. But living with this acceptor within is no space. It is already a divided life. Divided into one's actions, one's behavior, one's reactions, feelings, anger, jealousy, annoyance, whatever, frustration, and then the division into someone inside who accepts that, or who can learn to accept it. Who is that acceptor within? Is there such a thing, such an entity? And if there's the conviction that there is one, what is it based on? Other than thoughts about oneself? Which can quickly turn into rejection again. The acceptor, in a twinkling of an eye, can turn into a rejecter. And that's not the space that is talked about here, the space of really seeing without rejection or acceptance what takes place in relationship within oneself and among each other, and to see how many ideas one has about it which prevent actually witnessing it, seeing it, not as a witness. The words are always creating a dualism, but an observation in space, out of spaciousness, is not dualistic. It just reveals what is happening within and between two people or more. The tremendous fear of not being accepted, of being attacked, put down, and all that happens out of that fear. Often when one says, I need space, what one really means is I need isolation, I need walls to protect myself from further pain caused by people who are critical of me, put me down, don't like what I'm doing. And just withdrawing into this space of isolation. A couple of weeks ago we talked about fences, around oneself, who is what. That's not space. It doesn't allow the problem to receive air and light in silence. To be seen, in other words. Not by an acceptor and not by a rejecter. But if there's fear of hurt, the walls will go up. So can we? One person came to see me recently and said, is it possible to establish among people, like people here who work together, we have discussion periods together, to establish somehow or other some trust in each other, that we can really relate without constantly being defensive. Trust that the other will not take advantage of the let down defenses, of the vulnerability, but speaking to each other out of understanding, because one is not any different. We're all defensive of our images. And while we're defending, we're not aware that these are just images. If we were, we would not defend them. It would be too ridiculous, seen as being ridiculous, unnecessary to defend an image which is just an idea of oneself, has no substance except that of memory, of a memory chip in the brain. And yet we don't trust each other. Or does it even need this trust if there's the seeing that all that hurts and defends and aches and lashes out are images of oneself and of the others? If that is seen into, there will be understanding of each other and of oneself. And trust? What is trust? It is used a lot in counseling. We started out saying, trust that one will not be taken advantage of. But what if one is? That is one of the strong human tendencies to take advantage of each other, because one has been taken advantage of oneself. And as long as all of this happens unconsciously, subconsciously, one just does to others what has been done to oneself, unawares, or slightly awares, but with a certain feeling of justification. So, to say, let us establish this trust in each other that we will not take advantage of each other means, can we see the moment the urge to take advantage or to exploit someone or to manipulate someone comes up? Because if it is not seen or suppressed as not being a right way of behaving, then it works underhandedly and undermines any kind of trust. Or one manipulates one's own responses to become acceptable. So maybe it is a matter of of courage to be together, to speak to each other undefendedly. Courage and seeing the defenses that come up and seeing the vulnerability, feeling it, and not stopping there. What is it that's vulnerable? What is it that aches? When somebody rides roughshod over one's ways of doing things, over one's expectations, over an agreement that had been reached, is so incredibly much to watch in our daily life with each other. And yet we get so caught up in the contents and in our reactions to the contents that the deeper lying processes are left unattended to. Defense and isolation and separation, out of which all the problems have arisen in the first place. Memory. One always comes back to that as one looks, plays such a devastating part in relationship. And I don't mean all memory, but a certain way of remembering. Maybe we should go into detail, into depth here. Just had a meeting yesterday at the land talking with people about this whole complex thing of working together. When people who have come together to work together and to make something happen, like a very complex project as this building project is, and are superficially speaking different people with minds that work completely differently, Superficially, I say, because deeply we're all the same. But superficially, one mind may be the mind that needs to know and plan ahead and have everything in mind, orderly laid out, to be able to act from this, and another mind needs to see what is there in order to see, yeah, this is okay, and this could be changed, even though it had been planned differently. So, and one mind may be very much tied to rules, codes in building. So they're all kind of different, superficially different minds working together and finding it difficult to work together. As soon as there's the feeling there is one right way that should dominate, or, and we're starting with memory, if a memory perseveres that this mistake was made, the mistake may be made again, the person may be against me, may not listen to me, or may not come to check with me or talk to me, and a new situation that comes up is obscured by situations that have happened in the past, and the new situation may have very little in common with that, but has no chance to be seen new and approached and worked with new because of these memories in the minds of what has happened in the past, and then responding from that with not the trust we talked about, but suspicion or frustration, resentment or annoyance, which are the common concomitants of absence of cooperation and clarity of seeing. So how can one drop the memories that are unnecessary and not drop those that are necessary to be able to work? Every work needs remembering what needs to be remembered, or else one wouldn't be able to light a stove, find a pot, or know how to saw, or use a computer. We're not talking about those memories which are very functional, particularly if they're unencumbered by thoughts how good I am at this or how poor I am at this. Then there's interference of other memories with a very functional and necessary memory of how to do a job with skill. But to remember how he or she was last time, and convinced that this is the way she is again, or he is. This needs to be questioned and doubted when it comes up. And it is all happening at such lightning speed. It takes really energy and tremendous wanting to resolve this, to understand this process, no matter how lightning speed quickly it takes place. Because once a memory has been imposed upon a situation, once reactions are there, and the new harm has already been done, harm in relationship among human beings who probably at their core want to work together amicably, lovingly, without friction. At their core, I mean basically, we do, like here this hermit monk talking to someone, will you gather up some grass and come and visit with me? I don't think he's talking to anybody specifically, just to another human being. one person here once who had taken a month's hike alone through some wilderness area. He said coming out of that, there was just one longing for another human being, and the first one that he met, he just fell all over him and embraced him. Wonder what the man thought. It's tremendous yearning to be together. And here, in the case of this man who had been alone for so long, there had been a real exploration at depth of being alone. It wasn't just an escape from that. It can be, but it need not be. That morning at the lake, with I don't know how many people were standing here and there, one was not alone or lonely. One was all of these people, including the one who was pulling out a fish and throwing it back. So what will keep the memory either in abeyance of what somebody did in the past and therefore necessarily has done again, or at least question it so that attention will illuminate this process, which is so lethal to human relations. There's another memory, not of just what somebody did. We touched upon it during a talk in the retreat. This problem of if one wants to do something, we said one has worked all day, one wants to go out for a jog, one needs to jog, it is proven to be very helpful. One feels good, and one has been sitting all day long, working hard. So here one is all ready to go on the jog, and someone else who is still very busy with something asks one for help. Maybe not even ask one, but one sees that this person needs help. So at the same work day, same hours, and here he or she is still busy with something. Because a person may say, if one offers help, no, I don't need any. But what if the person asks for it or says, yeah, I could use it, if you don't mind, I don't want to bother you, or I know you need your time in the fresh air. So it's so crucial what happens at this moment, and it's related to what we said before. If one does decide to help, which may not even be a decision, it's clear help is needed here. It's not just somebody constantly asking for something, not wanting to carry through with something alone. One can see that. No, really help is needed here. And yet the jog is very badly needed too for one's health. It's not just a rationalization. One knows if one doesn't get this, then there'll be an aching back or goodness knows what all. Not the right metabolism, or just one misses out on this very delightful or joyful time of the day, which is part of one's life. So if one goes along and jogs, can one completely drop that one hasn't helped? because one has looked at it and it's clear this is what one is going to do, and so one drops the other. Or does one on one's jog take along the guilt feelings about not having helped the person, which then really wreck the jog? Or if one does help the person, can one drop the other this other activity that one has wanted to do so badly and so needed it? Can it be dropped completely? So completely that one won't think, well, I should have really also done that. If you observe this in daily life, you will find how often we are still torn afterwards. We've decided something, maybe we've sat together, hashed it out, talked it over, looked at it at depth, and come to a decision. And a little bit later, it comes up again. Well, but so-and-so is doing such and such, or did such and such. One hasn't dropped it, and anything that one hasn't dropped starts as a little tiny fester, and it grows. And then as it grows and the resentment builds up, as an explosion again, or it is an impediment to relationship. I've done this for you. Why today when I asked you for help, why aren't you helping me? In other words, one hasn't dropped that one did something for somebody, or one doesn't even to register it or remember it as such. Doesn't have to chalk it up on the credit side or on the debit side and keep a balanced book, which we're so trained to do because our parents and everybody else did it, the teachers. If one once gets a hold of that, it's a complex thing, but if one gets a hold of it and therefore can drop it, one is greatly relieved of a lot of problems. It's like giving money to somebody. A child, because your children are small. Well, you give them some money. You want them to, well, I don't want to get into that problem of how children, how they spend their money, small children. But large children. Or friend, you give them some money. How do you give it? Do you give it and you completely drop it? And I don't mean lend it. If you lend it, then yeah, you check every once in a while. How about it? Some payment? To start paying it back, that's all right, that was the agreement. But if the money was given, was it really given? Or is there something now that is at the same time deposited in the brain, which starts working in often very cumbersome and unhelpful ways? It affects the relationship. One has wanted that person really not just to have the money, but to spend it in a certain way which one would like to approve of, one to approve of, or one disapproves of other ways of spending it. And then what if the person has no gratitude for it? Has one dropped it? Or does one expect gratitude? Or I've given it so that at a later day, when I'm in that situation, I can approach him or her, and then I hope just as generously, in quotation marks, he or she will give to me. But one hasn't given generously in the first place, because one expects gratitude or a certain way for this money to be spent, which it may not be. And so it is with helping each other. We do keep constant score, bookkeeping, and would be so free to do something and drop the record of it. Or not do something and drop the record of that without remorse or guilt. Because if one finds out that person got sick and ill or got a heart attack because one didn't happen, one will feel guilty. But I'll feel, why feel guilty when had looked at the thing at the time and it seemed that this was the right way to go ahead and take the walk or the jog? One hadn't meant to send this person to the hospital with it. Taking an extreme case. Overwork can be a less extreme case. One can always make up freshly. Just brooding over something that happened prevents a fresh approach to a fresh situation. Remorse and repentance prevent that. The freshness of living now and not making a mistake over. If it was a mistake, it may not have been. Something happened that was beyond one's control. A mind that is able to drop memory of what somebody did or didn't do. Not repress it. Dropping is not repressing. Repressing is, I mustn't think of it. It's bad. And then it operates underground, on the unconscious layers of the mind. Dropping is see clearly the whole process and not keep mulling over it. Such a mind has space. Even when living in a narrow space. This dropping is not an act of will. If it becomes an obsession, I must drop this, I must drop that, then it's just an obsession. It's not dropping. It's an idea. To really work it is the functioning of attention. Attending completely at the moment a problem comes up, and then attending to the next moment when this problem has passed. If the attention is there the next moment, then it's absurd to carry the last moment around with one for future reference. One begins to sense the burden of it. Can we try this out? Begin to look at that with each other, our children, husbands, wives, colleagues, fathers, mothers. Not, not just try it, but do it. Without the doer. We'll end here for today.